Welcome. I spent decades as a city detective, where every case had a logical solution. My world was built on cold, hard facts, not ghosts or curses. Now retired, I am taking on a new kind of case. The ones people blame on the paranormal. They see phantoms, but I look for facts, because where others see the supernatural, I always find a truth far more chilling. This particular case began when the call came in from a remote, secluded village tucked away in a valley. A place so small and old that its traditions felt as thick as the morning fog. The local constable, a decent but clearly flustered man, reached out with a tale that sounded like something out of a medieval fable. "Detective," he began, his voice barely a whisper. It asked the bells. "The church bells, they ray gone, and so is old Mr. Gable." The village was a quiet place, a place bound not by asphalt and street lights, but by custom, and a deeply ingrained belief in the power of its century-old traditions. The twin iron bells in the church steeple were not just for telling time. They were, according to a long-held legend passed down through generations, their guardians. It was said that the rhythmic, continuous ringing of the bells on the hour, every hour, kept a malevolent force at bay, a shadow demon that had long been sealed in the surrounding woods. As long as the bells tolled, the village was safe, their homes protected, and their souls at peace. For generations, the Gables, a respected family of bell keepers, had ensured that sacred duty was never broken. Their lineage and their purpose were one and the same, the Gables and the bells intrinsically linked in the heart of the community. But on this particular morning, a silence fell over the village unlike any they had ever known. The silence of the dawn was not broken by the familiar, comforting chimes. The bells were utterly gone. The constable explained, his voice laced with pure bewilderment, that not only had the massive, heavy bells vanished from the belfry without a trace, no rope snapped, no tools left behind, no footprints on the dust that had accumulated for years, but the current bell keeper, Mr. Gable, was also missing. The village was immediately in a state of utter panic. The silence was not just unnerving, it was a physical thing, a heavy blanket that smothered all sound and hope. People were convinced that the bell's disappearance had broken the ancient seal, unleashing the shadow demon and leaving them utterly defenseless. This terrifying belief seemed to be confirmed in the most horrifying way possible when, hours later, Mr. Gable was found. His body was discovered in a secluded, wooded area on the edge of the village, a place locals, in hushed tones, called the Devil's Clearing. The constable described the scene as unsettling, with a sense of deliberate, almost ritualistic staging. The manner of his death, while clearly brutal, was shrouded in a sense of the ceremonial, as if performed to send a chilling, targeted message. This was not a random act of violence. This was something done with chilling purpose. And the message, to the panicked villagers, was as clear as the empty sky above them. The demon was here. I drove out there, leaving the logical order of the city for a place steeped in irrational fear, where the lines between folklore and reality were hopelessly blurred. The silence in the village was a physical thing, a heavy blanket that smothered all sound. I listened patiently to the terrified accounts of the villagers, their voices hushed, their eyes wide with dread as they pointed towards the dark woods and the empty belfry. I heard their tales of the shadow demon and its inevitable coming. I nodded, took it all in, but my mind was already dissecting the impossible. A demon doesn't care about church bells, and a demon certainly doesn't leave no trace of its passing. I wasn't looking for phantoms. I was looking for motive and means. I was looking for a person, because only a person is capable of a crime this cruel and this specific. My investigation began with the belfry. It was old and dusty, and yet, in an astonishing act of audacity, there were no signs of a struggle or any of the usual marks of a clumsy theft. But as I methodically swept the area, I noticed something the constable had missed, a detail so small it was almost invisible. On the inside of the belfry windowsill, there was a faint, almost transparent, oily residue, barely visible in the dim light. It was not a smear, but in a precise, circular pattern, as if a suction cup or a piston had been placed there. I also found a small, almost microscopic, metal shaving lodged in the wood near where the bells had been. It was too small to be from the bell's iron itself. It was a different alloy, and it was freshly made. I then turned my attention to the crime scene, the so-called devil-ass clearing. The constable had already secured the area, but I walked it slowly, methodically, feeling the dense, spongy earth under my feet. The scene was deeply unnerving, as if it had been staged for a purpose far more theatrical than any crime I had ever seen. There were no footprints leading away from the body except for the constable ass. But as I swept a small, high-powered magnet over the ground, it picked up something, tiny, almost invisible, fragmented pieces of metal buried just beneath the surface of the soil. They were the same unusual alloy as the shaving I found in the belfry. This was not the work of a demon. This was the work of a human with tools. Sophisticated tools. My next step was to look into the Gable family and their place in the village-ass history. The Gables were a respected, old family of bell keepers. They were pillars of the community, their status a given. But I found something in their history that no one talked about. Something buried in whispers and old records. A long-standing, bitter feud with another family, the Blackwells. For generations, the Blackwells had claimed that the Gables had stolen the right to be the village bell keepers, that it was rightfully their birthright, a sacred duty that was ripped away from them. This feud had festered for decades, an old wound that never healed, passed down from father to son like a terrible legacy. I also discovered that the last living member of the Blackwell family, a man named Arthur, was a recluse who lived on the edge of the woods and had a background in engineering and a deep, lifelong resentment towards the Gables. He was known for his strange, elaborate gadgets and his solitary, bitter existence. The pieces started snapping into place with chilling clarity. This wasn't a demon. This was a man consumed by a decades-old grudge, who had found a way to exact a revenge so perfectly tailored to the village-ass deepest fears that no one would ever see the truth. Here's how it went down. Arthur Blackwell, driven by generations of resentment and a burning sense of injustice, had finally decided to get his revenge. He wasn't after money or power. He was after the one thing the Gables had held over his family for so long, their legacy. He decided to destroy it, not with brute force, but with a horrifyingly cynical plan that used the village-ass own superstition against them. Arthur had spent months, maybe even years, meticulously building a series of elaborate, custom-made pulley systems and a powerful, silent, high-pressure winch. The metal shaving I found in the belfry was from his custom-built winch, an unusual alloy he had made himself to withstand the enormous weight of the bells without making a sound. The oily residue was a lubricant from his equipment, a unique compound he had developed himself. Under the cover of darkness, in the dead of night, he had used his specially designed winch and pulley system, quietly and meticulously, to lift the bells out of the belfry and lower them to the ground. He then used a pre-dug trench to slide them into a hidden location in the woods, leaving no track or mark on the surface. His plan was brilliant in its cruelty. He just steal the bells, he weaponized the village as fear, using their sacred tradition as the ultimate weapon. He knew that their deep-seated belief in the shadow demon would provide the perfect cover for his true motive. The murder of Mr. Gable wasn't a random act of violence. It was the final, devastating act of his revenge. It was a message to the village. The demon is here, it is real, and it is killing because you have failed to protect yourselves. The ritualistic staging of the body was a cynical ploy, a carefully arranged scene to make it look like the act of a supernatural entity, so no one would ever suspect a human hand was behind the crime. He had taken his family as honor, and in doing so, he had utterly destroyed the legacy of the Gables. He was a monster, but a human one, using folklore as his greatest weapon. I presented my findings to the constable, and together we confronted Arthur at his secluded home. He didn't resist, he simply smiled, a chilling, bitter triumph in his eyes. He admitted to stealing the bells to fulfill his family's long-held grudge, and he admitted to the murder. Using the town as superstition as the ultimate cover, the bells were eventually found, buried deep in the forest, their silence a testament to a long and bitter human conflict. No demon, just a man, a grudge, and a set of custom-built tools. So, there you have it. No evil spirits, no curses, just a chilling case of human vengeance. This one showed me how easily a person can turn another's belief into a weapon. They want you to blame a ghost because the truth, a man consumed by a grudge, is far more terrifying. This case proved that the most dangerous monsters aren't paranormal, but human. Stay sharp.